So I'm here on the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Seattle, and we wanted to look at the road to Velocity, a new event, velocityseattle.com, if you're curious, that I'm here out in the USA to see. But I also wanted to see what's special about this Seattle scene. We've got this real connection to this kind of bubbling, new, emerging modular scene in Seattle. So I went to speak to Bradley and Josh from Modular on the Spot and Tom and Cindy at Patchwerks to find out a bit of background about the scene, but also how this event Velocity came to be. So we're here in gorgeous Gasworks Park, like stunning, that all the old gas station stuff, right, is there. There's people playing on it. Some of it we can't get to, and then other bits encourages you to climb on it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
If not for the chain link fence, we would be climbing it now.
What led you to Gasworks Park? I mean, this is where you hold Modular on the Spot, right?
Yeah, it's certainly one of the most popular places to do Modular on the Spot, and it's where we started doing it.
So this was the first one. We should ring back round, and
yeah,
this was the first Modular on the Spot in Seattle, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like a natural place to start. Just it's such a beautiful place. But yeah, the first Modular on the Spot we did was here in July of 2016.
Okay.
And
so is that together, or did one of you do the first?
Bradley did it first, and then I hopped on that summer or a year later. I don't even remember.
It was September 2017. It was a year later.
A year later. Yeah.
So the first year, 2016, like I had just started getting into modular, and I jumped in head first and got a black and gold shared system like the moment they released, and had a good friend Joe who ran Voltage Control Lab. He does videos online.
Yep.
And so he had kind of introduced me to modular in general, and then also he's from LA, so he talked a lot about Modular on the Spot and that scene down there, and it just sounded so cool. And I said, I wish, first of all, I'm a big fan of we had a festival here in Seattle called Decibel, and I used to go there all the time. I would take the week off work, and
Was that an outdoor thing?
No, it was a multi-day festival across multiple venues. They had a conference, so workshops and stuff. Okay. I really missed kind of having that thing because it disappeared from our city.
Okay.
And I was telling Joe how much I wish I knew I could be connected to other people that were into this stuff. And
I think that's a feeling that a lot of people have had, whether they've done anything about it or not yet. There's kind of this feeling when you get into modular of, man, I wish there was anyone around me into this thing. Yeah. And they're there. You just kind of think they're not. Right. I remember traveling for hours in England the first time I met anyone into modular because I thought there was no one in the north of England that had modular.
Yeah.
Of course, I was massively wrong about it.
Yeah. Yeah, we were all here looking for each other probably. Yeah. So I was inspired by what Joe told me about Modular on the Spot, and I decided I'd love to try to do it up here. I reached out to actually Banna and Eric at the time to make sure they were cool with me using the name, and they said, go for it. We want it to spread. We want other cities to do it. And I think Atlanta had done one by that time. Okay. So yeah, that was it. That was the beginning, and I just found a few Facebook groups and started putting the word out. I didn't know anybody, but 8 people signed up, and that's. I had a PA, which was kind of the impetus for this. I was so sick of putting my electronic gear through a bass amp that I finally bought a really nice PA because I just wanted better amplification. Yeah. And then it just felt like a waste to have that sitting in my media room, not serving a greater purpose.
So how do you go about? I mean, obviously you have this. It gets easier, I imagine, but you have this doing any event outside. You get permission to do it here, right? Or do you just kind of rock up? Is it a little bit?
It's different. So the LA crew does it rogue. They just kind of do it under, at the LA River or something.
Yeah, in an undisclosed location till the last minute.
Yeah,
kind of they like day of, they like send the coordinates out. At least I don't know if that's what they do.
It's like
now,
the old UK rave scene was the same, like trying to decode this message as to where to be and when. It's got that kind of vibe about it, which is nice.
Right. Yeah. But here, it's harder to get away with that. So certainly in a big park like Gasworks or the other big parks like Cal Anderson and Seward, where we've done it, we do get permits just to be sure. We've done a rogue show on the I-5 bridge this year, and it went great. And I think we'll try to do a little bit more of them. Yeah. But yeah, for the big parks, we get a permit, and it's no sweat.
No, that's good to hear.
But other than that, the ethos of the event is the same. It's to bring people together, do modular only sets outdoors, and we all sit on the ground on picnic blankets. It's the the usual Mott's format.
Yeah.
And it went great. So the first event was amazing, perfect day, and I did 2 more that year at Seward and volunteer, and then next year, somewhere along the line, I got introduced to Josh. I had 5 more shows going, and it really grew from like the 8 people that I met at that first show. I kept a spreadsheet of the people that were signing up, and it just grew over a year. So it was 100 people.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you've also got Modular Nights, an indoor event as well, as part of this umbrella that is Modular Seattle. I mean, Seattle's known as being rainy. It's lovely today.
I'll let Josh talk to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, so as we kept doing Modular on the spot, and then as the scene kept growing, there's an increased demand for people who, they were into synthesizers, they had synths, they had drum machines, whatever, but they didn't necessarily have modular gear, or even just the modular people who wanted to perform with other stuff. And so we got enough of that demand where we were like, well, we should, try to do shows that cater to that audience. But we realized, it's only sunny in Seattle 3-4 months if we're lucky, out of the year, right? So we were like, well, let's just do it indoors, and that'll allow us to do it in the fall and winter, and then it'll create this nice differentiation between Mott's and this new thing, Modular Nights. And so like Bradley said, we had a friend Molly who does Lucio. She had art gallery in South Seattle, and so we had him there. I don't know quite what else to say about that.
But I mean, just the thing of having to get out of the rain seemed like it does.
Yeah.
From an outsider looking in, long before we'd spoke, that was the thing. I was like, yeah, you can't do that everywhere.
Yeah. No,
it really was
work.
Getting out of the rain and people asking for a format that wasn't exclusively modular, so that we could bring in a little bit more gear. And it just as a circumstance of being inside and at night, we started bringing visualists to those shows, because we could, because it wasn't daylight. So it had a really different feel, and we gave it a different name, so we weren't, so we didn't want to have any confusion with Modular on the Spot and what it's all about. So there was that.
we did want to be respectful of what Eric and Banna started and their kind of rules for Mott's, and so we wanted to keep Modular on the Spot. And then,
so how long was it kind of bubbling over before this idea of velocity came to be?
Well, I think the way that sort of came about was the Soto space was great, super intimate. It felt like an art space. It was a really different vibe. It wasn't like a venue, a stage. But that's, I think, where the community gestation was happening. And then, unfortunately, the lease for Moquito ran up, and so we had to find another place to do this. And at the time, Greg Markle had been coming out. He's Recovery Effects. Yeah. He was coming out to our shows at Moquito, and he is good friends with the owner, one of the owners of the substation, and he suggested that we talk to him. And they agreed to let us do 3 nights there as a trial run. And so we kind of continued our Modular Nights format over there in that venue. Now we had a stage and a PA, and it was, very different feel, and a bar. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then those shows, they did really well. We had, I think, around 100 people at those shows. And at that point, the substation thought, we're making good money on the bar. Do you want to do this every month? We said, sure. So we have every first Saturday of the month at substation for Modular Nights. And somewhere around the beginning of this year, they asked if we would like to utilize their whole venue, which is 3 rooms, not just the room that we're in. And we said, well, that sounds like a festival. Let's try that. Yeah. So they didn't want to go for multiple days right out of the gate. So we've limited it intentionally to 1 day. Just to wrap our head around doing something bigger.
Yeah.
And
it looks like it's massive. Everyone I know back home is like, this thing's huge, right? And I'm like, yeah, it looks like it's huge. It looks like it's going to be huge.
It has grown to proportions we had never anticipated, and we're super excited about it. And we're definitely, interested in proving that we can do it so that we can do it year over year. Yeah. So this is kind of our trial run. It's 1 day, packed agenda. And it's a way to utilize this great venue that we're already in, but utilize the whole venue and hopefully build a better relationship with them.
So how does Patchwerk line up with this? You mentioned that Substation mentioned, do you want to do something bigger? Obviously you get these ideas. Where does kind of Patchwerk and Modular Seattle merge
Sure.
Well, there's kind of it's hard to really pinpoint like an exact moment where we were like, hey, let's do this together, because in reality, like all the different players in the Seattle synth scene, we all kind of collaborate and just work together.
That's the thing I'm seeing from outside, that you all talk to each other and you're all like ready to go to do stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk, I imagine, in a lot of countries about doing stuff, but there's like one or two people that are maybe pushing, and then there's not much comeback from the community sometimes.
Right.
It seems like Seattle's like mobile and ready to go and keen for it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think part of that too is like all of our like willingness to collaborate. Like, you know, we had breakfast with our friends at Bleeps and Loops, and we talked like, okay, like what are you guys doing? What are we doing? How can we help each other? How can we not step on each other's toes? And so I don't know. I don't know like what it is, but there's just
I think both Patchwerks and what we're doing, we're providing a hub for people to revolve around.
Yeah, they
And-
become these anchors that people kind of move to.
and it allowed people to meet each other. It allowed all this cross-pollination of ideas. And with Patchwerks, you know, it's, you know, they have a physical location that can anchor us all. So as we're passing through that place, we're seeing each other. And so I think it just really helped to like firm up all those community relationships. Patchwerks and us, we started kind of the same year. I think it was 2016. They were spinning up the shop, and I was spinning up the idea to do Modular on the Spot here, kind of unbeknownst to each other. And it was only like 6 months in that we realized, like, oh, we should probably talk to each other and do things, you know. But we didn't really work together in any kind of official capacity for a long time. It was just, you know, we were both providing great anchors for the synth scene.
Yeah, just like I said, there's no question to this, and it's probably not framed as a nicely worded compliment either, but it just seems like this hub that's just bubbling. Like you said, it's mutual, it's not stepping on each other's toes, it's mutual benefit, everyone kind of grows together. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but it just maybe doesn't happen everywhere else.
Right.
This kind of all helping each other vibe, we all know that that's right, but I think there's this not wanting to give too much away, not wanting to do too much things for free or volunteer or help. I mean, Velocity, like we spoke about some of the staff list, the people involved and willing to help and be involved is huge.
it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I hear people all the time, like, you know, at Modular Nights or whatever other shows we do, people always come up to me and they're like, hey, like, you guys are doing great stuff, like, you're helping the community out. And I always tell them, like, you don't realize, like, we couldn't be doing what we were doing if it wasn't for the community helping us and propping us up. So they're just as much a part of it as we are.
Yeah, I think some of the impetus around Velocity was to shine a spotlight on all the cool stuff that's happening here in Seattle, but also, like, you know, make it appeal to a broader audience and bring in some good talent from out of town and stuff. So yeah, it's a good cross-pollination of our local scene and all the great things that people are doing here, you know, and other stuff. So yeah, we couldn't do Velocity without everyone. Another thing that we're kind of confident about with Velocity is that each person that's contributing kind of has done their thing really well in isolation before. And so, like, we're doing our Modular Nights embedded in Velocity. Patchwerks is embedding one of their synth meetups, which they were doing at a place called Melrose Market for the years prior, and we're going to try it in this new venue. But, you know, so the trade show aspect is really a Patchwerks thing that they've done before and can do reliably. We can do the production side of it and the stage reliably. We have all this educational content that's coming from, you know, Tim Held at PodMod and Bleeps and Loops and AI synthesis and technological taxidermy, which is another community group out in Spokane that's fostering community very much like what we're doing. So it's cool because every one of those partners knows what they're doing, has done it in isolation. Now we're just going to do it together under one roof.
That's what I mean. It's a really clear coming together of a community.
Yeah.
It's not you found 100 volunteers that have just said, yeah, we'll help. It's clear that there's a real pull and kind of energy to it.
Yeah.
So here at Patchwerk, I wanted to ask you both, Sydney, Tom, why make a shop? What about the Seattle scene that led to making a shop? Because despite the scene that we're in and how it feels as a community, there's not that many little independent modular shops around, right?
Right. Well, the story goes, Cindy and I have known each other for a really long time, over 20 years, just being in the local electronic music scene here in Seattle. And each of us, we have our love of synthesizers, and Seattle actually has a pretty rich history of music, right? And electronic music is included within that. But we didn't really have a boutique synthesizer shop, and everybody knows Modular is going crazy, but there's a lot more to it than just Modular as well. And we each independently had the idea, Seattle needs something like this. We want a place for ourselves. We want a place to grow a community. And was it 2015 NAMM?
That was the first, 2015 NAMM.
Yeah, we each were at NAMM, walking the floor independently in 2015. And we ran into each other and we're like, what are you doing here? So clearly we needed to join forces to build this for Seattle. I mean, Seattle's a music city. It's an up-and-coming, affluent city. There's a lot of tech tinkerers here, a lot of builders. So it just seemed right, don't you think?
Yeah, and we also wanted to provide a physical location where people could come and meet each other, build and develop the community, and have a chance also to try before you buy. Obviously, if we were all ordering things online or driving several hours, to try out and decide, oh, do I really want this module or this piece of gear or not? So yeah, just having a central place has been really, really important, I think, for developing the community as a whole too. So the physical brick and mortar store was really important. We didn't just want to be an online retailer. We wanted to have a physical place where people could get together.
Well, it seems like you all talk to each other. I say all, paint everyone in Seattle with the same brush. You all talk to each other more in this community. That's what seems fascinating. As someone in England and Europe, I know Portland is just obviously way more manufacturers than probably anywhere else in the world, but I'm not sure how well connected that scene is. It may be really well connected. Places like Germany obviously is a great electronic music scene, but I'm not quite sure it's got that same vibe, at least to me, looking from the outside in. So I think having, as you say, a brick and mortar to come to kind of really centralizes it. Everyone just seems to support each other that bit more. People know at this point I'm here for Velocity. I've obviously been advertising that. I mentioned this whole DivKid's West Coast Adventure thing. But you put on events as Patchwerks already, right? The kind of scene's bubbling up enough to do a big event. But what kind of events were you doing beforehand?
Sure. So we started with events before we had our storefront, before we even had any equipment to sell. There was a team called the Mostly Modular Trade Association kind of before us.
A Facebook group, right?
It was more than a Facebook group,
Okay.
but yeah, it was a group of like-minded, mostly modular manufacturers here in the Seattle area, and they put on events, big get-togethers with workshops and everything up in North Seattle. It's a place called Shoreline, and I think we each went to several of those. That certainly stirred my interest or our interest in the events, and the MMTA, as they were called. For whatever reason, they decided not to focus on events anymore. So that actually left a void that, at least for us, we felt was unfilled.
Yeah.
And, the community sort of demanded it, right? So we knew that we could carry the torch from MMTA with our events. We started, synthesizer meetups, basically. Come bring your stuff, show it off to other people. Patchwerks has always been everyone is welcome, right?
Yeah.
All age groups, all different kinds of people. And that's how we got started. It wasn't until our second or third meetup where we actually started selling equipment, but we do other kinds of events as well.
So we have a pretty active lesson program here. We have a bi-weekly soldering night where people come and work on musical projects, building, learning, and beginners are welcome as well as people with more advanced skills. So that's been a really great way to help build the community of builders. And we also do a lot of manufacturer workshops. And then we sometimes have things like Ableton Live meetups, Max meetups, people from both the hardware and the software universes, because of course there's a lot of overlap there as well. So we have a lot of those types of events here. We have a room that can hold about 25 people, and we try to use it as much as we can. So
But I think it's to speak to this idea of mostly modular. It's kind of strange to me when people just go 100% modular. I think it's very restrictive. Well, personally, I wouldn't want to be 100% any one device anyway, but having software events must get people interested in modular and hardware. Because I think it's such the modular curious audience, as I like to call it, is huge. There's so many people kind of interested, maybe not sure. And I think having everything out on show and events that speak to that is only going to kind of grow the community. Mm-hmm. Which, as you build this community up, we kind of lead to velocity, which from the outside, all my friends back in Europe are kind of like, this event's huge. It's kind of got all the names there that they would want to see, performers, companies. How did that come about? You know, there's Modular on the Spot, who of course we spoke to, Modular Nights, there's the shop, there's your events, and then all of a sudden it's just like, bang, this is what velocity is. And right from the off of talking to yourself, Cindy, and Bradley from Modular Seattle, I was just kind of like, all right, wow, they're going big with this. So where did velocity come from, I guess is the question.
Yeah, so I think the whole velocity event is really a natural offshoot of all the different community organizations in Seattle and really in the Northwest. So that's the great thing about it isn't just a Patchwerks event or a Modular Seattle event. This event is a partnership. If you go look at the partners section, of the event page, there's a dozen partners there. These are all individual people in the community that have been doing, complementary things in the modular and synthesizer scene here. We all know each other. We all work together, and we thought, hey, we have an opportunity here to take it to the next level, bring in some, bigger names from other places all around the U.S. and all over the world, and really try to bring to the Northwest something that we've all been traveling long distances to be involved in other parts of the world, and we have such a great scene of both enthusiasts and manufacturers here that, the Northwest is recognized in the modular community as a pretty big focal point already. So why not get everybody together in one place and have a really great time for a day? So this is the first year, and we're hoping to continue it beyond this year and hopefully get bigger and better every year.
I mean, there's no question here, and maybe it's a very badly formed compliment as well, but it seems like the kind of biggest event that is very community focused without being a big company or a big entity or a big kind of corporate sponsor or something. It seems like the community's kind of gone, we can do this to this scale. And it's the only event I think that kind of feels like this, at least to me. And I don't know anyone watching or yourselves how that feels, but it does feel like the biggest. It feels like a community meetup that's just gone boom.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. I mean, Cindy mentioned all the partners, and we're partnering, with Modular Seattle, Patchwerks partnering with Modular Seattle on that. It grew because we invest in the grassroots community. Josh and Bradley from Modular Seattle, they got involved. I remember Bradley giving some talks we have a bookstore locally called Ada's Technical Books. And I thought, wow, that guy can really teach. He's really smart and very articulate. And he and Josh started Modular on the Spot here in Seattle. But, you mentioned earlier, Ben, how, some people want to limit themselves only to modular equipment. Other people want to include. I think that's one of the beautiful things about this world. I mean, you can decide to place constraints on yourself to enhance creativity if you'd like. I'm a keyboard player, so I like to include keyboards. But what we've noticed with Patchwerks is that, we've been lucky to, help drive this community and help grow it. And from that, some of these great new companies here in Seattle are popping up. So Modular Seattle is one of those. And the community is not owned by us, right? So Velocity becoming a partnership with, close friends and well-aligned missions, I think was just a natural progression. And thank you for the compliment.